Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video lesson. We are dealing with lesson 1.1 on points, lines, and planes. Just wanted to continue our study of this topic and review some information with you. So follow along with me as I complete and explain a few practice problems in this video. So we'll see our instructions tell us to use the figure on the right, our plane here that has lots of points, lines and segments and rays inside of it. Use that figure, the information that we see, to answer questions 1 through 5. It does tell us to note that line RN intersects the plane V at point N. So that lets us know that V is the name of the plane. It is not a point, right? Notice there's no dot with it. And so this line RN is going through the plane, like an arrow going through a sheet of paper, okay? Also, point R is not coplanar. Point R is not in the plane, as that's a part of the line that is going through the plane, okay? So with that being said, let's begin. Number 1, name 3 collinear points. So we reviewed some vocabulary and some new terms, and we know that collinear means on the same line. So we're looking for 3 points that are on the same line. So let's pick a line if we can, and then find 3 points that are on it. All right, and we can see multiple lines here. We will ignore the line RN because it's not in this plane V. So let's just look at this line going horizontally. We can see point A, N, and X. Those 3 points are on that one line together. Therefore, those 3 points are collinear, and we want to make sure we name them correctly. We name points with capital letters, and since they are 3 distinct points, we want to separate them with commas so that we don't confuse anything and make it look like it's a plane or some other figure. So 3 capital letters separated by commas. Okay, I bet you could think of another example or another option as an answer for this question, and you would still be right. So I'm sure you see some other options here, like C, N, M, that would have worked as well. Number 2, name ray CN another way. Name ray CN another way. Now, I knew this was ray CN because I noticed on top of the capital letters that there's a line with just one arrow, and that one arrow signifies that we have a ray, okay? So you want to keep that in mind, remember that. And let's locate this item on the actual figure. Ray CN means it has an endpoint at C and it's going in the direction of N. So the ray is going just in that direction. Okay. What's another way we could name that? Well, we could say ray with endpoint C and going in the direction of M, because M is the same direction as N. And that will work for us. But it's important that you put all the right markings, use the correct notation. So it's a ray. We want to also have a ray as our answer, and make sure the arrow is pointing in the same direction. Number 3, what is the intersection of AX, of line AX, and line CM. So I know in this case that we have a line because the bar on top that we see has two arrows. So these are going to be lines. Right? And let's identify where they are. So we have line AX here. I don't want to change to a different color. Okay. We have line AX and line CM. At what point, because we know lines intersect in exactly one point, what point is the precise place where those two yellow lines are crossing? And we can clearly see that that's occurring at point N. So that's going to be our answer to number 3, point N. Let's do that in a different color so it shows up a little better for you guys. Okay. Number 4, draw segment CX on the figure. So in this case, we actually have to perform an action and draw something. We're not answering a question. It says draw segment CX on the figure. Let's use green. And when we draw the segment, we need to know that segments have endpoints, no arrows. Thus we can see here on the notation, there's no arrows on the CX. And we just want to draw a straight line from point C to point X. And that's it. That's your segment. Okay. Figure. Number 5. Number 5 says name a pair of opposite rays. Name a pair of opposite rays. Now we talked about this last week as well. We know that opposite rays are rays that share an endpoint, and that endpoint is typically in the middle. It's easier to answer these questions this way if we pick a point in the middle. Opposite rays are collinear, and they share an endpoint and they go in opposite directions. Okay. So we will look for a line with 3 collinear points because we'll need a middle point to act as the end point for the opposite rays. And then the other 2 points in opposite directions, we'll use those to name it. So let's get a different color here, say purple. And let's look at the ANX, that line. Make it a little bit more visible. Okay, so you should see that highlighted in purple, and we know that that line has point A, N, and X. When we identify the shared endpoint, remember these 2 opposite rays, there's 2 of them. They both should have a common letter, a common endpoint. That endpoint has to be the one in the middle. So it's going to be point N. We're going to need point N for both of our answers. And then we just need to have the point that's in one direction, right? So that would be X. We can name our first ray in X, and then the other point that's on the opposite direction would be in A, okay? And then to complete your names, you just need to put the right notation at the top, and this is a ray, so you should have a bar with 1 arrow. And And it is important that these arrows are over the right letter, the correct letter, okay? That's what I mean, the correct letter. And so the arrow should not be above the end point that is repeated in both of them. You know, this point that was in the middle, the arrow should not be above that letter. Okay, it should be above the two opposite letters because these are opposite rays. Okay, those are 5 problems for review. We will pause for a moment and then we will do a couple more. Okay. Okay, guys, so we have 5 more problems to take a look at. This time we have a new figure. It is in geometric solid. We can see that it's 3-dimensional, and we want to use it to answer these questions 6 through 10. So number 6 says name 4 coplanar points. Another vocabulary word from last week, coplanar. We know that means in the same plane, okay? So you have a choice. There are several planes here. You can pick whichever plane you want. I'm going to use the plane here on the front. It's this front plane that's shaped like a trapezoid. If I focus on that plane, then 4 coplanar points would be R, D, C, and Q. And I know that I can write that with capital letters separated by commas because these are points. I'm not naming the plane, I'm naming 4 distinct points. So it's important to notate everything correctly. And that would be the answer. Number 7. What is the intersection of plane ABC and plane DRQ? Or before we can determine where these planes intersect or cross or touch each other, we need to make sure we can clearly identify what planes they're talking about. When we have a solid figure like this, the planes are nothing more than the sides or the faces of the solid. So if you can imagine a package in the mail shaped like a rectangular box, let's say from Amazon, that box has several sides, and those sides each would represent a plane. In this case, this figure, we have multiple planes. They are asking us for the plane or the side that has the points ABC. That would be this plane here on top. Look, A, B, C. Those are all on this plane up top. So what's the intersection of that plane and plane DRQ, which would be, look at that, the one I already shaded, the purple one. So we want to see exactly where these two sides of this box thing meet. And you should be able to see where they touch, like where does the purple side touch the green side? And you'll notice that every time you have planes intersect, they meet in a line, okay? They intersect or meet in a line. So when we answer this, it's important that we write it with the correct notation. We need to notate it like a line. So this would be line DC or CD, whichever way you wrote it. And you would have to put your arrows on the top. Yes, that's number 7. Number 8 says shade or color in the plane OPQ. OPQ. So before I do that, I'm going to unshade some things that we already did, just kind of in scratch work so that it won't confuse us. So let's take it back to a clean slate. And for number 8, we're looking for the points OPQ in the same plane. So we have OPQ, That's going to be in this plane down here on the bottom. And all we have to do is shade that one in. Oh, we're shaded in there. Just two more, guys. Number 9, name a segment. Okay, so make sure you think about how you name segments and do that correctly. Name a segment with one endpoint at C. So you have a lot of choice here, but you just have to make sure that one of your points is C. Point C is right here. Okay, there's a segment that touches C going this way. There's one right here. There's one right here. And so you have choice to decide which one you want to use. I'm going to use QC because I like the way it sounds, like quality control. And then I just have to make sure that I note it the correct way with the bar, with no arrows, segments, no arrows. Okay. Last one, number 10. Bob says that line AO intersects line BC at some point. Before we go any further, why don't we kind of highlight those two lines so that we can make them stand out. We've got line AO, which goes through points A and O, and of course continue on and on forever. And then we also have line BC. That's over here on this side of the box. Okay. So Bob says these two pink lines intersect at some point. Okay. Sarah says they do not. Who is correct? Explain why. So think about that for a moment. Who do you think is right? And remember, this object is three-dimensional. It's just drawn on a flat 2D surface. And it's difficult to really capture the essence of a 3D object on a 2D plane, but this is 3D. So imagine, if you will, that Amazon box. And if you have the side vertically going up, an Amazon box, right? And then on top of the box, you have this horizontal line going across. Would those two cross, intersect? Yes or no? Is Bob right? Is Sarah right? Explain. Okay. So guys, these two lines will not cross. They do not. Sarah is actually correct on this one. Okay. They are not coplanar. They don't share anything from the same plane. This one will extend on and on forever, up and down. And then you have this gap between them here. Let me highlight the gap a different color. They're this far apart. Okay. You have that gap, and this one continues on and on forever. But remember, this is three-dimensional. So that blue gap is consistently between them the entire time. So it doesn't matter. Even on paper, it looks like, oh, well, eventually they'll touch. That's not true. This blue gap is consistent forever. They're the same space apart, on and on for eternity, and they're not going to cross. Okay? So I hope this review of these 10 questions have been helpful for you on this introductory lesson into geometry on points, lines, and planes. Make sure you complete your other assignments for the day, and I will see you next time. Bye.